American Indian culture that I have not really looked at are the use of shields as a defensive weapon. Um, you know, my first exposure to them would have been on movies in the 1960s, where they always had their shield when they were going into battle. But anyways, what I'm going to share with you now is from a Smithsonian Institution publication that that talks about the shield and armor that various Native American cultures use. This was actually published in 1895, and it is a really good work. So without further ado, as they say, I would like to read to you the portion of this text dealing with the shield. And I quote, "The shield is the first offensive weapon both in point of time and of usefulness. While the shield, on first thought, may seem merely intended as a covering for the vulnerable points of the body, its importance is far greater in parrying. Therefore, with this idea in view, the shield may be as simple as the parrying sticks of the Australians, which begins the classic series of Lane Fox. If one bears in mind that defensive weapons are the concomitants of other offensive weapons, the development of the shield becomes more clear. Thus, where missile weapons are used, the parrying stick is a natural and adequate defense. Where missiles are given greater velocity with the throwing strap, the throwing stick, or the bow, the shield must cover the body better, and it would seem that the broad shield is the countergrowth of the bow. The circular shield characterizes the Western Hemisphere. The North American shield is convex and from about 12 to 26 inches in diameter. Now, the Mexican area is perhaps an exception, though the codices almost invariably depict the round shield, and the surviving Mexican shields on which Mrs. Zella-Nuttall is authority are circular. The here's one of those words. The Nahua shield was sometimes rounded and sometimes oval, sometimes rounded on the lower side. Some shields were of ordinary size, others were intended to cover the entire body, and were constructed so that when not in use, they could be folded up and carried under the arm. History bears that the shield of the Iroquois Indians had different shapes. As to material, nearly all American shields are made of a thick raw hide, that of buffalo and elk being most available. Shields worked out from a single piece of wood, like those of the Dayaks, are found on the Rio Marañon in South America. The Virginia Indians used targets made of barks, B-A-R-E-K-S, barracks. The Navajos made a shield of cedar rods twined together with cord, which may be connected with the rod armor of the Athapascans and the similar cane shields of the Nahus of Mexico. And I know that I'm not pronouncing those right, and I'm very sorry for that and hope that it does not offend anybody who has cultural affiliation to those particular peoples. Among the Seris and the Chicaratos of New Mexico, another kind of shield was made of small laths, closely interwoven with cords in such a manner that, when not required for use, it could be shut up like a fan and was carried under the arm. In Tabasco and along the coast, tortoiseshells inlaid with gold, silver, or copper were commonly used as shields, as the Malay specimen from Singapore. Reeds, grass, hides, some types of cloth coated with India rubber served to protect an Aztec common soldier. The Pueblo tribes carried round shields of basketry of heavily and closely netted cotton or of thick rawhide symbolically painted. The construction of the North American shield is given in detail by George Catlin. The ingenious process of contracting and hardening the hide by fire was common. Catlin wrote, Sioux shield made of the skin of the buffalo's neck, hardened with glue extracted from the hooves and joints of the same animal. The process of smoking the shield is a very curious as well as an important one in their estimation. For this purpose, a young man about to construct for him a shield digs a hole of 2 feet in depth in the ground and as large in diameter as he designs to make his shield. In this, he builds a fire, and over it, a few inches higher than the ground, he stretches the rawhide horizontally over the fire with little pegs driven through the holes made near the edges of the skin. The skin is at first twice as large as the size of the required shield, but having got his particular and best friends, who are invited on this occasion, into a ring to dance and sing about it and solicit the Great Spirit to instill into it the power to protect him harmless against his enemies, he spreads over it the glue, which is rubbed and dried in, and the skin is heated, and a second busily drives other pegs inside of those in the ground as they are gradually giving away and being pulled up by the contraction of the skin. By this curious process, which is most dexterously done, the skin is kept tight whilst it contracts to 1/2 of its original size, taking up the glue and increasing its thickness until it is rendered as thick and hard as required, and his friends have pleated long enough to make it arrow and almost ball-proof or bulletproof. When the dance ceases and the fire is put out, when it is cooled and cut into the shape that he desires, it is often painted with his medicine or totem upon it, the figure of an eagle, an owl, a buffalo, or other animal, as the case may be, which he trusts will guard him and protect him from all harm. It is then fringed with eagles, quills, or other ornaments that he may have chosen, and slung with a broad leather strap that crosses his breast. The shields are carried by all the warriors in these regions for their protection in battles, which are almost invariably fought from their horsebacks. Held on the left arm, usually by a simple thong of buckskin attached to the interior. Wooden handles believed to have belonged to the Pima Indian shields were found in a cave with war clubs on Superstition Mountain in Arizona by Dr. E. Palmer. It is the custom of most tribes to put one or more covers of dressed buckskin over the shield, the covers being decorated. Now, the decorations of the North American shield forms one of the most faithful sources for the religious beliefs and practices of the Indians, since they had no written text except for the Cherokees later. These provide kind of a summary of their beliefs. The decoration was inspired by a revelation through a dream following among the Crows the terrible initiation ceremony, and among all tribes following an ordeal. And the protection of the shield has largely become fetishistic, and in many cases the survival of this ancient means of defense has been brought about by its cult relations. Now, the warrior fraternities of the Moki and Zuni tribes have an elaborate ceremonial shield. In the Moki ceremony held at the winter solstice by the warrior societies, the sun is represented by a shield, and attack of the defense is graphically dramatized. The shields of the Sun Warrior fraternities are decorated with the totems of the individual societies. A description of this ceremony was published by Dr. J. Walter Fuchs. The various feathers, hooves, and horns, and skins of animals, etc., hung to shields are also personal fetishes. The distribution of the shield shows that most of the American tribes possessed the shield, and a majority appear to have had no other defensive weapon other than the shield. There is a strong presumption, however, that the use of body and shield armor was widespread in America, as historical notices show. Charlevoix, writing of the Iroquois, observes that while the western tribes use bucklers of buffalo hide, it is pretty surprising that other Indian nations never use them, and the South American tribes who use body armor are said to be unacquainted with the shield itself. Likewise, the Eskimos seem to be destitute of this particular defensive weapon. There are probably 50 American shields in the National Museum, some collected as early as 1830, and remember that this text was published in 1895. So there may be more now, or there may be less. Several have been handed down from father to son for a period of 60 to 70 years, and these shields are from the tribes of the western portion of the continent and include the Crows, Sioux, Comanches, Kiowas, Navajos, Utes, Apaches, Pimas, Zunis, Mokis, etc. And that is the complete text of the chapter called Shields in this work from the Smithsonian Institution. Now it goes on to talk about body armor at great length, actually, and body armor is something I had never really thought about in connection with the Native American Indian, but yeah, it was used, and perhaps in the near future I will bring you an edited version of the text that I have here about body armor. So I hope you all enjoyed this, and thank you for stopping by. I will talk with you all again real soon, God willing. Stay safe, stay happy, and God bless each and every one of you, my dear friends.